Howdy, y'all. I'm here with another solo podcast. I didn't want to wait for everybody to get together again because it takes so long for everybody's schedules to align. And this one that I want to tell you about is this story I want to tell you about is so interesting that I just couldn't wait. So it's about Elmer McCurdy. His death is what's really interesting, but I didn't know about his life. So we're going to talk about his life and then talk about his death. So he was born in 1880. He died in 1911, and he wasn't buried until 1977. So it's like a 97 year from the day that he was born to the day he was actually buried. But he died when he was 31. So let's get into it. So Elmer McCurdy was a Wild West outlaw. He was a train robber and a bank robber, and they called him the bandit that wouldn't give up. He had some other nicknames, but that one was one that kind of stuck. He was born to an unwed mother, and she was a teenager when she had him. And his father was her cousin, which is disgusting, but it happened back then. 1880. He was raised by his uncle and his aunt. And for the longest time, they never told him the truth about his parents until his uncle passed away from tuberculosis. And his aunt and mother confessed everything to him. After finding out the truth, he became very unruly and rebellious, which is completely understandable, finding out that your mom had her when she was in her teens and your dad is her cousin. That would fuck anybody up. He ended up started drinking in his teens to deal with the news that he received. He ended up working for his grandfather as a plumber, and he did that for a while. He started, his behavior improved. His grandfather and mother died 2 months apart, which destroyed him. So he ended up becoming a drifter. I want to say that he was in his teens, but I'm not sure. He joined the Army in 1907. Let me do some math. Okay, math is done. He was in his teens when his father and mother died. He joined the Army in 1907, which I think he was like 17. Somewhere around there. And he worked using nitroglycerin for demolition purposes. I'm not exactly sure the timeline here. He ended up getting honorably discharged from the Army, so I couldn't figure out why, but he did. So it seemed like that, he got his life together. He was in the Army. He got discharged for some reason. He went back to being a drifter after he was discharged. And then he ended up meeting a friend while he was drifting around state to state. He was born in Maine, so he was just traveling around. And then he met somebody from his friend from the Army, and this is kind of where trouble began. So both the men ended up getting arrested for possession of burglary paraphernalia. I said that word right. They got caught with chisels, hacksaws, funnels for nitroglycerin, gunpowder, and money sacks. I love the money sacks. I wonder if it had the dollar sign on it, or if it was just a normal sack. Anyway, he was released and he was found not guilty. So, way to go, Elmer. His life of crime started. In March of 1911, Elmer tried to rob a train with 3 other men. They successfully stopped the train, and Elmer went to work on the safe because he was the one that uses the nitroglycerin. So he's like, I'm going to blow open the safe. Well, he did blow open the safe, but old Elmer used too much. And the safe and most of the money was destroyed because you're thinking not only are you having dollar bills, but you're also having gold coins and silver coins and all that stuff. Most of the money was fused to the frame of the safe. And the men managed to get about $100 to $500 in silver coins that were not destroyed. So I guess you could take it as a success that he got the train. He went to try it again in September 1911. Elmer's next attempt was to rob a bank. He got 2 other men, and it took him about 2 hours to break through the bank wall. So in my mind, they are chiseling outside of the wall to get into the bank and the safe without setting off any. Were there alarms back then? I don't know. So now that doesn't make sense as I think about it. I don't know. They chiseled the wall. It took them 2 hours to do it. I'm surprised nobody walked up and caught them. So they successfully went through the bank wall, and they went to blow open the outer vault with nitroglycerin, which apparently is easy accessible back in the 1900s, early 1900s. This time he blew the vault through the bank. He used too much again, and the vault went sailing through the bank. And then he quickly did the same for the safe. But for some reason, the fuse did not light. So what they did is it ended up going through the bank and stealing about $150 in coins found at the teller areas. You would think with him being able to handle nitroglycerin, he would learn how much to add and how much not to add. But I think he's just learning as he goes. So in October 1911, Elmer's next mark was the KT train. He heard the train had about $400,000 in the safe. Elmer and 2 other men went to rob the train. They successfully stopped the train, but it was the passenger train and not the train holding the safe. So Elmer and his men managed to steal about $46, 2 bottles of whiskey, a revolver, a coat, and a conductor's watch. To celebrate, Elmer drank some of the whiskey until he passed out. He ended up passing out in a hayloft. So the police were onto him by then, so they got some bloodhounds and they tracked him down to that hayloft, and a gunfight broke out, and that's where Elmer was killed with a single shot to his chest. You know, poor Elmer, he tried. He really tried. So this is the second half of the story is the most popular story. So Elmer had a rough life. Unfortunately, he passed away. His body was taken to the funeral home, and the undertaker embalmed him. He used some arsenic on his skin and in the balm and thing to preserve his body because they didn't know who was going to be able to claim the body. After 6 months, he was not claimed. So because he was not claimed, the funeral director was a little upset because he's like, I want to be paid for my services. I embalmed the body. I should get money for this body. So the undertaker refused to bury the body because he wanted to get his money. So the undertaker came up with a plan. He dressed Elmer up in some street clothes, placed a rifle in his hand, and stood him up in the corner of the funeral home. The undertaker charged 5 cents to see the bandit who wouldn't give up. And Outlaw is always interested the general public because it's something that they don't see every day. So he started generating a lot of money from the display of this human corpse and the dead and everything like that, the dark, the macabre, interests people. So he was rolling in some money once the word got out that he had this dead body to view. Soon he started getting offers from carnivals and sideshows and freak shows to buy the body, and he kept refusing. Like, I'm not going to just give away to somebody to be a prop. He goes, this is a person, but I'm going to display him and make some money. I guess it was just, I can't say that he was like morally right for it, but I mean, I guess he didn't want anybody else to make money for it. I don't know. Eventually, 2 men came forward claiming that he was Elmer's brothers. They wanted to take him back to California and give him proper burial that he deserves. Wasn't Elmer from Maine? He was from Maine, and I did not mention, but he did die in Oklahoma. So he's in Oklahoma right now. And these 2 brothers are like, it's my brother. Let's take him back to California. I don't know if he was ever in California. So that definitely should have raised some suspicions, but it didn't. The men actually produced documentation stating that they were brothers. So once all the documentation came in, the body was released to these 2 men. James and Charles Patterson were the brothers. They were brothers, but they were not Elmer's brothers. James and Charles were owners of the traveling carnival called the Great Patterson Carnival Shows. Elmer's body was featured at the carnival as the outlaw who would never be captured alive. So he ended up being on a freak show, sideshow, carnival thing. Okay, 1922. After being part of carnival, Elmer's body ended up traveling to the Museum of Crime. I'm pretty sure this museum had like the Bonnie and Clyde car, wax figurines, all this other stuff. And you would think this would be his final resting place because it was the Museum of Crime, but it was a traveling Museum of Crime, and I'm not sure how it happened, but his body ended up getting either sold or given, probably sold, for promotional purposes in 1933. He was propped up in theaters to promote movies. Very, very interesting. In 1967, Elmer's body was used as a prop in the movie She-Freak. I was trying to find a clip of this. I don't know if I could. I've never even seen that movie, so I might be able to find a clip to put up. I might not. I don't know. But She-Freak is the movie if you want to see if you could find Elmer's body. He was eventually sold to the Hollywood Wax Museum, but he was never displayed because he started to deteriorate after, how many years was it? I did some more math. After like 50 years, there was some deterioration to his body, so they did not display him. He was then placed in an LA warehouse, lost and forgotten. Well, a man showed up who worked on the $6 Million Man. He found Elmer, and he thought he was a wax figurine, and he's like, this will be perfect on set. The scene they were doing was at the Pike Amusement Park, in the ride Laugh of the Dark. They staged Elmer hanging by a noose in the corner, but the arm fell off. Elmer's arm fell off. And they realized that it's not a wax figurine because there is muscle and bone exposed. So they're like, oh crap, this is a body. They finally identified him in 1976. And it was brought back to Oklahoma. So in 1977, 96 years after he was born, he was finally buried. 60 years after his death, Elmer was finally laid to rest in Guthrie, Oklahoma. He was buried next to another outlaw, Bill Doolin. To make sure Elmer's body was not stolen, they poured 2 feet of concrete on it, over his casket, and then buried him. So that's the story of Elmer McCurdy, the outlaw who wouldn't give up, the outlaw who wouldn't be caught alive, the traveling corpse. This story is crazy. Like I said, I didn't know anything about his life. I only knew about his death and his traveling. But now there is the whole story. So I'm sorry the girls missed out on this one. This one was pretty good, but I couldn't wait to tell this one. And I do have a lot more stories I want to tell. Just, I hope everybody's able to get together so I could share these crazy stories that I have been researching. But that's it. Bye.